The Bastille didn't fall for liberty, it fell for bread. And what destroyed France wasn't a revolution, it was an accounting failure. In July of 1789, a furious crowd in Paris stormed the Bastille. They weren't storming it for liberty alone, they were storming it because the financial system that kept their country alive had collapsed. For years, France's monarchy had pretended it was eternal, wrapped in pageantry, wealth, and divine right. But beneath the chandeliers of Versailles, the French state was bankrupt. The revolution did not begin with philosophy. It began with debt, inflation, and bread that cost more than wages. The guillotine was not forged in iron, it was forged in ledgers. And if you think this is just history, think again, because the same mistakes that destroyed the French monarchy, reckless borrowing, unfair taxation, and paper money spiraling into worthlessness, still echo in today's financial system. Let's rewind to the 18th century. France was one of the wealthiest and most powerful nations in Europe, with nearly 30 million people, fertile farmland, and global ambitions. But it had a structural problem. Its financial system was archaic, corrupt, and incapable of managing modern power. While Britain had created the Bank of England in 1694 and developed a bond market that allowed it to finance wars with remarkable efficiency, France clung to older systems. Taxes were not collected directly by the state, but by private tax farmers who paid the king a lump sum for the right to extract revenue. These collectors squeezed peasants mercilessly and pocketed the difference. Offices were sold to the wealthy as investments, creating a parasitic bureaucracy more focused on protecting privilege than serving the public. The result was a state that bled money at the top while suffocating its base. The wars of the 18th century exposed these weaknesses. The War of Austrian Succession, the 7 Years' War, and especially France's intervention in the American Revolution piled debt onto the monarchy. Supporting the American colonies against Britain may have looked like sweet revenge, but financially it was suicide. By the early 1780s, the French crown had borrowed more than 1 billion livres to fund the conflict. Debt service alone consumed over half of royal revenue. Imagine running a business where more than 50% of your income goes straight to interest and you're still borrowing more. That was France. Versailles glittered with gold. Ordinary people carried the burden. The tax system exempted the wealthiest classes, the nobility and the clergy, from direct taxation. The Third Estate, more than 90% of the population, paid land taxes, salt taxes, church tithes, and feudal dues. Bread accounted for up to 70% of a worker's daily spending. When harvests failed in the late 1780s, prices doubled. Riots over bread erupted in Paris long before the Bastille fell. Survival itself became political. The monarchy tried reform. Finance ministers warned the king that the state was bankrupt, but privilege blocked every attempt to change. By 1788, France could no longer borrow on reasonable terms. Credit dried up, payments failed, grain shortages pushed bread prices to record highs. In desperation, Louis XVI summoned the Estates General in 1789 for the first time in more than 150 years. What began as a fiscal meeting opened the floodgates of revolution. The Third Estate realized the truth. This crisis was not just about numbers, it was about a system designed to keep them poor. When their grievances were ignored, they declared themselves the National Assembly. Soon after, the Bastille fell. The revolution had begun. But what most history books leave out is this. The Bastille didn't fall because of ideology alone. It fell because France's financial system collapsed under its own contradictions. Revolutions may begin with ideals, but they run on money. After the monarchy fell, the revolutionary government inherited the same problem, an empty treasury and a mountain of debt. The people expected liberty, equality, and bread. Instead, they found hunger, unpaid soldiers, and creditors circling like vultures. The revolution could not survive on slogans. It needed cash. So the National Assembly turned to what seemed like a brilliant solution. They confiscated the lands of the Catholic Church and used them to back a new currency. In 1790, the government issued assignats, paper money backed by those lands. At first, it looked like financial genius. France was rich in land but starved of liquidity. Assignats were marketed as the people's money, a clean break from aristocratic privilege. Confidence returned, briefly. But paper money has a curse. Once politicians see that it works a little, they can't resist printing more. What began as a limited issue became an open floodgate. By 1792, billions of assignats were circulating. Inflation accelerated. The more the government printed, the less the currency was worth. By 1795, the assignat was practically worthless. People carried stacks of paper to buy a single loaf of bread. Farmers hoarded grain. Shopkeepers refused the notes. Trust collapsed. Foreign enemies flooded France with counterfeits, turning money itself into a weapon of war. Wages were destroyed. Savings evaporated. Riots returned. The revolution answered with price controls and terror. Economic failure became political violence. Those accused of hoarding or speculation were executed. The guillotine became not just a tool of justice, but a tool of economic control. By 1796, assignats were abandoned. Their replacements failed just as quickly. The revolution had promised freedom, but financially it delivered chaos. And this pattern was not unique. Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, modern economies printing their way out of crisis. The lesson was clear. Printing money buys time. It never buys stability. By the mid-1790s, France was exhausted. And in that vacuum, a new figure rose, Napoleon Bonaparte. When he seized power in 1799, one of his first priorities was stabilizing money. In 1800, he created the Bank of France to restore trust in currency and credit. Liberty had unleashed chaos. Order, backed by finance, would rebuild the state. The deeper lesson of the French Revolution is this: financial systems are the skeleton of political power. If the skeleton breaks, no regime survives. This is not just history, it's a warning. When governments borrow beyond their means, tax unfairly, and destroy trust in money, collapse follows. The guillotine may be gone, but the consequences of broken finance remain. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. History doesn't warn loudly, it punishes quietly.